Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Schmitt. If you're watching on YouTube, you may notice that I'm somewhere new again. And it's a little bit better. So the last place I was in, as I mentioned, the basement and sitting on a pool table with my little setup on the pool table and recording my podcast that way. I've moved all the way upstairs and I'm on a card table, not a pool table. So a little bit better. And the reason I'm sharing all of that with you now, number one, to explain the different, very still plain background. But number two is to talk about those little tweaks that we make. And it's a concept that I call experiments. And while that's not a very new word, and I can't say that I made up the whole process, it is something that I like to use with clients as well as with myself when I'm working on my own personal development, because there are so many advantages to doing an experiment versus making a change. I don't know about you, but change can be super scary, or it can feel scary because it's just out of your control, or it feels like I'm making this like big. And as I've talked about many, many times on this podcast, we as humans aren't very capable of making these huge flips all at the same time because we are wired to do certain things. We're wired with our thoughts that generate those feelings that cause us to behave a specific way and then give us that result that we always get. And then we reconfirm those thoughts and those beliefs with that result. So what we end up doing is we avoid these changes. We block ourselves from making a big change, or we wait until we have all of our ducks in a row before making small improvements because we want to make that big change all at the same time, because it just feels like this is this ideal thing I want, and that's what I want to get to, and I better, get all the ducks in a row so I can get to there, versus taking small incremental steps forward that may not be ideal, but they're still better. So to use my example of small, tiny improvements, as I mentioned, I was in a basement. So if you've been in a basement of an air-conditioned house in the summer, or really any basement, it's colder. And I don't like a lot of cold. So I was freezing. So that was one really awful thing. Second thing, I was on a pool table, so I was banging my legs underneath. It was not ideal. It was flat though, so that's a slight advantage over what I'm at right now. but I made a small improvement because those were the big things that were in my way. I moved up 2 floors, so I'm in the warmest part of the house now, so that makes me better. I have a warmer, cozier sweater on, which also probably going to overheat me after I start talking too much. But I'm at an actual table, so I can fit my legs under the table and then just talk a little bit easier to you guys. So small improvements, it's a little bit better. I've got a little more space that I can use properly because I don't have the lip, right? So I'm trying this out. It is far from the permanent spot that I'm going to be, but making those small improvements is making it easier to do my process. And I'm not waiting until it's all the way done to make the small improvement. While this might seem logical, for some reason, when we're making changes, particularly if it's like a new process we're implementing, or even when we're maybe developing a new product or developing a new way of working, like a new process maybe, we always want to wait until we have it totally defined. But this concept of experiments allows us some flexibility, and it allows us to try things in small increments to see, is this going to work? What are the things that might work better or might not work better? So sometimes we can mock up something before we spend time designing and building the new thing we're going to try. And that's all part of this experiment process. So like I said, I can't take credit for it. This is a concept that is used very, very much so in a very lean environment that implements a Toyota Kata principle. And that kata, if you know that word at all it is kind of a repeated motion that, like if you're in martial arts, it's a repeated motion or process that you learn so that it gets ingrained. And so the whole concept behind it in this experiment sort of thing is that we get very used to trying something or making a small change, trying something new, figuring out what works, what doesn't, and then redoing it. And that is momentum. That's how we make big changes from making those small incremental changes. So I know if you're listening to this, your goal is to make big, huge changes in your life. And the best way to do that is through these experiments. So I'm going to talk about the process of it and what Kata says and how to use that in your own personal development or coaching with your team and helping to kind of take some of the fear away from changes, whether they're behavioral changes or actual process changes. It works the same. So the process. So this is the Toyota Kata process, basically. So again, it's the concept of experiments. The first thing is to understand kind of the overall direction. So this is that big change that you want to make. Where do we want to go? To use my podcast setup, I want to have a desk set up ready to go where I've got my lighting squared away and I get to sit down and record, right? So very little setup to do. A lot of times, even in my normal setup, I'll like pull my microphone closer, move my keyboard out of the way. And so like very minimal sort of setup. So that's the kind of the overall goal. All right. And then after we understand that, we want to understand, okay, where are we today? So where I am today, I'm halfway through a move. So half of my stuff is in Canada, half of my stuff, well, maybe 10% of my stuff is in Michigan. So 90% of my stuff is in Canada, 10% of my stuff is in Michigan. I'm still helping to kind of sort things out. Like there's a whole other background, but basically my current state is I'm in a very transitional space, yet I still need to work. Okay. So that's the current state. So I got to figure something out. Right. The last time I was there, I had a freezing cold place, not ideal table, and I kind of had to set it up and tear it all down when I was done. Okay. So kind of not ideal in terms of that easy setup thing. We need to establish like the next target. All right. So my next target condition was to not be freezing cold, not to have numb fingers and cold feet and toes. And also to kind of have a slightly more permanent space. But that part I kind of set aside a bit. But that not freezing part was pretty key for me. Okay. So the small change I made, I moved it upstairs and grabbed a different table that I can move around and I can experiment with different locations, even in the room that I'm in. So I've still got that flexibility thing, but I'm definitely way warmer. So success there. And I could potentially leave this set up if I wanted to. I'm not in anyone's way. We can still use the room as per normal. So it does meet some of those conditions. Is it ideal setup for lighting, background, stability of a table? I don't know. No, absolutely not, but it's there. This is my experiment. So I'm doing the experiment right now as we speak. And as I shake the table, the whole table shakes. So small change that needs to be made there. But I had developed my hypothesis, I guess, first is the first step there. My hypothesis is I will be warmer. I can get a good setup. So I'll have a decent setup. I'll probably have some stability issues. So that was my hypothesis. Pretty true. We'll say can't put my elbows on the table because I will shake the whole screen, but we're definitely in a better setup and I can leave it, which is good. So extra benefit I didn't really think about when I was doing it. So it might seem kind of ridiculous to be talking about this when we're talking about getting your setup. You know, of course, you're going to make that small change when you're freezing or when something is very semi-permanent. But those small changes make it more bearable. Like if I just put up with what I had, then I would be like just really frustrated and I would feel this daunting and not really want to work because I'd be freezing cold. And, you know, it was the basement and people might need to use it. There was kids' toys in there too. So there's struggles with it as well. I probably should have mentioned, actually, this is actually the third space I've been in. I've been working on the main floor in the dining room, which also had a lot of disadvantages. Advantage of being slightly warmer, not warm enough. Huge disadvantage that it is in the main part of the house and there are other people around. So there are a lot of improvements that I've steadily made, but to find this place with a door, that's huge. So there's a lot of different advantages to it. So to kind of recap this process for you, the first step is to understand that overall direction. So when you're having coaching sessions with your team members or when you're working with them, there's likely a big overall direction that they want to go. Or even for yourself, like, I want to be this amazing leader who knows exactly what they're doing, who knows the right thing to say when it gets difficult. Like, you've got this big thing, but you're not there, right? So the second step is to understand, okay, where am I today? So if you're working on yourself from going from being like, or you want to be this, under control leader who knows the right words, who understands how to keep their emotions under control so that they can help their other team members keep their emotions under control. So that's where you want to be. But let's say today you have a tendency to blow up if things go wrong, and you have this other tendency to say, this is the way we're going to do it, and I'm going to do it this way. Or if maybe someone doesn't meet a target, you yell instead of trying to understand what went wrong. Okay, so let's say you're starting there. So you're not going to go from where you are today to this very emotionally controlled, speaking the right words exactly, and really being able to guide people through. You're not going to get there in one step. So you're going to make a small tweak. So that small tweak might be, I'm going to take a breath. That's all you're going to do. That is your experiment. All right, so what's the hypothesis of what's going to happen if you take a deep breath? And this is that proper deep breath. I'm going to say this again because I have to remind myself of it, but I think it's important to say because deep breaths, I'm going to breathe into my microphone, so I'm going to apologize there, but a lot of people think deep breaths are like, right, that is an exasperational breath, right? When I do that, I am frustrated, and it just increases my frustration. It just shows other people I'm frustrated, which might frustrate them. But a true deep breath that is calming is all the way into your gut, very deep, slow breath. You're not raising your shoulders up because that just increases the tensions. Deep down into your belly. And I always say count to 4 on your breathing in. Then you're going to hold it for like 2 counts. And then you'll breathe out for 6. So if you're breathing in for 4, out for 6. So the idea is that you want to breathe out longer than you breathe in. And many people tell me when I first tell them this, like, I'm going to hyperventilate. It's like, well, number one, you're not, but that's what the pause is for. The pause is for you to hold it in, kind of keeps that clean air in for a second, but it also prevents any kind of hyperventilation. So you're not going to hyperventilate with 1 breath or 3 breaths. So first of all, there's that. But secondly, that pause is there to also prevent that. So your experiment then is to take that deep, proper breath when something frustrates you. Okay, so what's the hypothesis of what will happen? Well, okay, if I pause and I don't react instantly, then I won't yell, probably. And that breath will actually calm my body because it calms my nervous system down. So I might not yell. Okay, so that's the potential result. So you try that for a week, or you try it for a couple of days, and you see what happens. And you start to note the results. Okay, so then as we start to do that more, we start to see beneficial results. So leaning back into our thoughts, feelings, behaviors result wheel, now our results might be questioning our deep-seated beliefs in that we can't control ourselves, or we blow up and we get frustrated with people. So we're starting to change that belief because we're seeing that we can control ourselves. We can control our emotions, and we can control our reactions. That is huge. That builds confidence. And the reality is that deep breath did not take any more time. It even didn't take any preparation necessarily. It might take some accountability and reminders. So very likely when you're starting that sort of process out, you're going to fail a few times. You might remember it the first time. You might forget it the first 5 times. But if you're consciously thinking, I'm going to take a breath, even if you blow up first, then you take the deep breath, you're still going to be better off than if you didn't take the deep breath at all. So these experiments are extremely powerful because they start to implement that change immediately. And when we implement the change immediately, we start to see the results immediately. And what happens when we see those results immediately, we change our beliefs and we start the momentum. Momentum is the goal, because when we start to get better and we start to see that success and we start to build the excitement around, oh my gosh, things are better. Now we're making real change and we're excited to do the next change. And we're not daunted with this overwhelming must-do list and this really insurmountable task that we've put in front of ourselves. Because really, even climbing a mountain is one step at a time. So we have to build the momentum and we have to start making those tiny steps. And then in a month's time, in 3 months' time, we're going to look back and we're going to say, oh my gosh, I have made a huge amount of progress. And it didn't feel like this daunting thing. It was tiny changes. It was a small breath here. It was practicing using the word and, not but. It was working on giving proper feedback. So it's small, tiny changes in our behaviors, small, tiny changes in the processes. These small, tiny changes bring on the big change and the success we want. So if you are excited about making big changes, but you're not sure how to put these small experiments into place, I have a new program starting. It is asynchronous coaching. So it's something we can start doing tomorrow. What that looks like is we start with an onboarding one-on-one call, and then you have unlimited access to me via Slack, which is a channel where we can type, we can send files, we can speak just audio, and we can do video as well. And we can go back and forth and we can talk about these experiments. In the Kata way, these experimental conversations, they are very short. They take about 2 minutes of coaching time. So when we're talking about a daily update of something, then we're able to do that very quickly. So we set a goal and then we keep your experiments rolling. So this is hugely powerful. I'm calling it a beta version because I am still working out all the details of like how many training sessions I'm going to do, how many coaching sessions I'm going to do, like live one-on-one. So you'll get a little bit of extra because you're going to get a lot of my, hey, does this work? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Hey, let's have a coaching call so we can kind of update where we are. And we're just going to try a bunch of different things. So if you're thinking about joining or you have a goal that you want to achieve and you're just not sure how to break it down, this is the time to join. You're going to get so many extras and it'll be tons of fun to be part of something from the ground level. Yeah, you'll extra benefit, or really the biggest benefit is you're going to make change that is lasting and doesn't feel as hard as it could be if it was one big, huge change at the same time. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please like it, share it with a friend, leave a review, leave a comment on the YouTube video, and most importantly, implement these things so that you can keep doing and getting better. I wish you all the best. And we'll see where the next experiment takes me in the next video, but I will see you on the next episode of the Business Building Blocks podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmitt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.